What is up, my snow friends? This is the Snowbard, and today I am showcasing my version of a pretty spicy Nami list for the Community Format 3C2L of the One Piece TCG. If you want to know more about 3C2L, you can check out the VV Theories introductory video in my description. And I'm just gonna dive right into it. So if you guys are unfamiliar, we'll showcase Nami first. So her effect is that when your deck is reduced to 0, you win the game instead of losing according to the rules, and you attach 1 Dawn to her. When this leader's attack deals damage to your opponent's life, you may trash 1 card from the top of your deck. So in the standard format of One Piece, Nami is an outright meta deck because she cares about control and interacting and making sure that she mills out before your opponent gets to kill her, basically. But I don't want to play control in this deck because I have, well, the only other leader that can pair up with Nami is Arlong. So the reason why this is because Nami and Arlong both have East Blue in their leader types. I'm gonna apologize. There's gonna be a bit of glare, but let's keep going. So now, Arlong has an effect as well where you attach 2 Dawn to him, and when you attack, you pay 1. You can play up to 1 character card with a cost of 4 or less and a trigger from your hand. Now, of course, this deck cannot be played without a stage from either Fishman, East Blue, or Arlong, and naturally, the only stage that is available is Loketown, which is also from the East Blue. You activate main, you may place this card and 1 card from your hand at the bottom of your deck in any order. You draw 2 cards. This is pretty strong if you're trying to go for a mill strategy in general, or if you want to refill your hand. So basically, every upkeep, if you have used the stage's effect last turn, you can just pay 2 Dawn. You can rest 2 Dawn and just reactivate it, which seems pretty strong for me, but enough about that. So because of the type restrictions on the cards and of deck building choices, we can not really play the usual suspects like Love Love Mellow, or I would say the Impel Down All-Stars. We can't really play the typical Nami package. So how can you manage to win through mill in this deck if you don't have the usual suspects? Well, let's just dive right into it. Let's put them on the side. We'll just put them there. Let's have the cat hold that. So, since rares, commons and uncommons are 2 ofs, and super rare secrets and promos are 1 ofs, it made an interesting, I would say, it made for a very interesting deck building direction and choice as to how you're going to achieve Nami's alternate win condition, because technically with 2 leaders you can still kill people, but I wouldn't say kill. You can actually, why would I say kill? Anyway, so to fulfill the Nami alternate win condition, we're gonna first start with 2 copies of Bellmare. So Bellmare is a 4-cost 5k with counter +1, and attach 1 Dawn to them. When this character's attack deals damage to your opponent's life, you may trash 7 cards from the top of your deck. And on KO, you may trash 3 cards from the top of your deck. So technically, you attack and you hit, you mill 7 and then it gets KO'd. That's 10 cards from 1 attack. This is just one of the few effects that does this for mill, but this is a very important strategy because you kind of want to be aggressive with the deck. And another card to support that are you get 2 copies of Zeph, basically. If you don't know what Zeph does, I'll just repeat it over. Same thing as Belmare, but he's a 5 for 6k. And on 1, when this character's attack deals damage to your opponent's life, you may trash 7 cards from the top of your deck. So it's a bigger Belmare. And on play, you may return up to one character with a cost of 3 or less to the owner's hand, and trash 2 cards from the top of your deck. There's I believe there's an errata in this, but we're not going to get into that. So you already have 2 of those spanking good cards. Well, let's add a deck building choice that no one really thinks about. It's Gaimon. He's a 2-cost 0. And when you deal damage to your opponent's life, you may trash 3 cards from the top of your deck. If you do, trash this character. So you have 2 leaders that can attack. If any one of them hits, you can just trash Gaimon. You trash 3 cards. That's pretty cool. Another mill card that would be very, very useful is Boodle. 2 copies. Also a 2 for 0, but he has blocker. And on KO, you may trash a card from the top of your deck. So let's see. So far we have 10, 17, 20... Well, I'm only counting like 1 copy, but like 10, 17, 21. Already 21 cards you can mill just from these cards alone. And then you add Zeph. Zeph is, I believe it's been popping up on some Nami lists, or it did pop up in some Nami lists, but it's a 3 for 3 with a counter 1k. And during your turn, when your opponent activates blocker or an event, if your leader has the East Blue type, which both of them do, you may trash 4 cards from the top of your deck. So based on these cards alone, that's already half your library. And that's pretty sick. But it's not just that we're gonna go for. We have the only Rush Usopp. It's a 4 for 5. And when you attach 1 Dawn to him, when this character's attack deals damage to the top of your opponent, to your opponent's life, you may trash 7 cards from the top of your deck. So, considering we have 3 major characters that already do like mill for 7. This is pretty important if you're trying to mill out in this format, because there's not a lot of mill effects, as I said in the beginning. I've also added Sogeking, which will be the mercenary of the deck. It's a 7 for 6 and can be treated as an Usopp according to the rules. And on play, return up to 1 character with a cost of 6 or less to the owner's hand, then draw 2 and trash 2 cards from your hand. So we have, let's say, so that's 21, 23, 26, 31. That's 31 cards you can mill based on these individual cards alone. However, what if you accidentally milled Usopp and Sogeking? Well, how are we going to get around that? Well, let's bring in the pirate crew. They are just 2 copies of it because that's the max I can do. So 1 for 0, a 1 cost 0 power. And on play, you can add up to 1 Usopp from your trash to your hand. Being an important distinction, we do not say blue Usopp because color restrictions are basically non-existent in this format. So in any case that you decided to go shenanigans with them and you mill Usopp or Sogeking, which may be important, if you have one of these in your hand, you can bring them back. I actually won a game like recently where I was able to attack with Usopp. It died. I played Usopp's pirate crew. I was able to play it and attack again, which milled me 14 cards, which was enough to basically win the game. It's pretty sick. So that's the Usopp combo that I was actually... This was a suggestion from yours truly, Vivi. He said that it's a nice addition because I think he saw it in another deck somewhere. But I figured that I might as well add it, and it has helped immensely with the strategy, because at least you can reanimate Usopp 2 times. That's pretty sick. Or you can bring your Sogeking 2 times. Like that's pretty cool. Well, to further enhance Nami's win condition, well, you got to draw a lot of cards. So that's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna draw a lot of cards. And where do we start? We start with 2 copies of Sanji's Pilaf, where it's a 3 cost event, activate main basically. You draw 2 cards and you activate its main effect when it's a trigger. 2 cards for 3. If you're a Magic player, this is already pretty good. If you're a Yu-Gi-Oh player, you will be drooling, because that's anyway. Also, look at that nice alternate art from the reprint set. Anyway, 2 copies of Gum Gum Giant Gavel to go with it. So it's a 1k counter. It's a 1-cost counter where you trash a card from your hand. You may trash, and up to one of your leader gets 4,000 power during this battle. Then you may trash 2 cards from the top of your deck. So we counted 31 just by the cards alone. This is 35. Cool. We add to that 2 Usopp's Rubber Band of Doom, where it's a 1k count. It's 1k. No, sorry. A 1-cost counter. Again, sorry. Up to one of your leader or character cards gains plus 2,000 power during this battle. Then you may trash a card from the top of your deck. We said 35. This is 36. Now, you also play Kaya. 2 copies. 1 cost, 0 power character with a 2k counter. And on play, you draw 2 and trash 2 cards from your hand. That's 37. And then 2 copies of Hanger. 2 cost 0 for a 1k counter and activate main. You may trash a card from your hand and rest this character, draw a card. So I believe that's 38, 39. Yeah, sorry about that. So typically these are the cards that you would see in a standard Nami deck, but because of deck building restrictions, again, you only see 2 of them. But 2 ofs is still pretty good in a format like this, at least for the time being. I might update the list in case the community decides that we're all moving to 1-ofs, but for now, this is what you get. And here comes a pretty good segue. It's good to draw cards and all, but how are you going to find specific cards that you need? Well, there's 4 copies in the deck that I would like to get into. The first one is basically 2 copies of Apis. It's also a 2k counter. And on play, you may trash 2 cards from your hand, look at 5 cards from the top of your deck, reveal up to 1 East Blue type card and add it to your hand. Then place the rest at the bottom of your deck in any order. So if there are a few cards that you don't want, you can just discard them and then you get to search another one. Same thing goes for Nami. So this is a 2 cost 2,000 power. On play, look at 5 cards from the top of your deck, reveal up to 1 green, typically green, but you can just go for 1 East Blue type card other than Nami and add it to your hand. Then place the rest at the bottom of your deck in any order. Now, Nami, apart from being, besides being a really great searcher, it can cheat this out with Arlong. On turn 2, well, technically, if you were to play Arlong first, you can go for Nami, but Nami is the main, is the leader. She is the captain, and Arlong is the first mate. So technically, this Nami works better as a searcher than just being plain cheated out with Arlong. But you can technically still do it. It's not really a big deal. So, you've only seen a lot of cards that just go for Nami. What about for Arlong? Well, we'll get into that, but we'll just deal with one more Nami card. It's Nojiko. So this is where the removal suite starts to come in, where for this one, she's a 2 cost 0, and on play, if your leader is Nami, return up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less to the owner's hand. if they started playing like blockers, like I don't know, Eustace Kid, which is currently unplayable in this format. But if they start playing Queen, they start playing Yamato, or any 5 cost character that is or less that is very annoying, you just bounce it to your hand, which is pretty sick. So continuing with the removal package, or rather the annoying package, as I would like to describe it. This is where some of like the Arlong cards, where the Arlong cards come in, but not all of them. I've made a very specific choice, and this is one of those choices. You get Chu, which you can also cheat out with Arlong. It's a 4 for 3k. And on play, KO up to one of your opponent's rested characters with a cost of 4 or less, and you can play this card on a trigger. So basically removes any 4-drop that might be annoying. If Lucci were to come into the format, this is a good removal. Any blocker that is rested, or any character that has been played rested, is very, like, Chu can just chew through them. And to help with the resting of those characters, we have Gin, if that's how you pronounce his Japanese name. Anyway, it's a 4 for 5, 1k counter. On play, if your leader has the East Blue type, rest up to 2 of your opponent's characters for the cost of 4 or less. Now, if you had 10 mana, technically, if you had 10 mana and you don't really have to do anything, you can just pair it up with Krieg. 6 for 7. On play, you may trash a card from your hand and KO up to 2 of your opponent's rested characters for the cost of 4 or less, and you attach 1 Dawn to them, and this character gains double attack. That's just like the shenanigans. That's typical Krieg shenanigans, but we're not gonna get into that. That's just like a nice removal suite, or annoying suite. Following up with Chu is Kurobi. It's a 4 for 3, same stats as Chu. And on play, if your leader has the East Blue type, rest up to one of your opponent's characters. So you can rest a big guy. You can rest a big blocker, a lethal attack. This is very good at either stopping stopping a lethal threat coming your way, or being able to use it with Arlong to rest a blocker and potentially for the win without actually mulliganing. Not mulliganing, milling. So continuing on with that, we have Fisher Tiger. It's a 5 for 6, and this character can attack characters on the turn in which it is played. And on play, if your leader has the Fishman or Merfolk type, which Arlong is, rest up to one of your opponent's characters for the cost of 6 or less. So this also like functions as like some sort of like annoying, because you rest up whatever character that costs 6 or less that they would like to keep, and then you just swing into it. Pretty good. I don't know exactly what I can swap Fisher Tiger out for, because he's mostly there for me as a counter, or like because most of the strategy that I do is basically just removal. Not removal, but just milling out in general. I guess like resting a character and then just swinging into them and killing them makes it a lot more likely to keep my mill characters on the board. But if you guys have any suggestions on what to replace Fisher Tiger with, maybe in the future, you can just let me know. So another Fishman card is basically Arlong, which you can also cheat out with himself. It's a 4 for 6. On play, you may trash a card from your hand. Up to one of your opponent's rested leader cannot attack until the end of your opponent's next turn. This is very annoying if you're going up against a Nami mirror in this format. This is going to be very, very annoying. What else could also be annoying? I believe Sanji and Zoro would also be annoyed with this card, because they won't be able to bounce a 2 cost or more and untap a character. There's also, I believe there's a bunch of characters, a bunch of leaders that would love to attack, and not giving them the option to attack the turn it comes, like until the end of their next turn, is going to stifle them a lot. And I find that really, really important. I would say, like, if Katakuri were to come into the format, or something like Pudding, which wants to ramp, you just put this out, and then they're like, you can't attack, you can't ramp, and that gives you a lot of time to go and be aggressive, which is very, very important. Now, we're gonna take a break from these fishmen or whatever it is, and we're gonna play another event. It's 3,000 Worlds. It's a 4-cost event. On main, you place up to 1 character with a cost of 5 or less at the bottom of the owner's deck, which is kind of the same as Nojiko, but instead of putting them back into their hand and potentially giving them like a counter or a big effect that they can play next turn, you can just like remove them forever. And the trigger is you can bottom a 3-cost instead. That's pretty good. And the fact that it's East Blue is just like, I believe it's one of the only I think events in East Blue that is removal, because I have no access to Gravity Blade, which is a navy, or I don't have Red Rock, because Nami in this iteration is not a Straw Hat, which is kind of annoying, but what can you do? And there's also one card that is very like a pair of cards basically. It's Django. I find him really interesting, considering how my boyfriend and I have been playtesting this for a while. So 5 for 6, 5 for a 6K, and on play you choose one. Either you set up one of your East Blue type leader or character card for the cost of 6 or less as active, or rest this character and up to one of your opponent's characters. So it does double duty. Either you untap Nami and you go attack again to mill one more card, or you do the same effect as Kurobi. Insane. Like, you get to choose one. It doesn't really matter. You can untap Arlong and put a second you can put a second character down. That's pretty good. And now it's just, I believe I have 5 more cards left. And these ones are mostly just like either counters or triggers that you want to play with Arlong. It's basically Hachan, 2 copies of his 2K counter version and 2 copies of his 1K counter version. And the 2K counter version has a trigger that if your leader has the East Blue type, which both of them do, both Nami and Arlong do, you play him. And the 4 for 5 1K counter version has a trigger that you get to play up to 1 Fishman or Merfolk character card with a cost of 3 or less from your hand. The thing is, I don't have one in the deck, and it seems to me that he's just there as some sort of like filler or something that you can just bring out with Arlong as a 4K, or you just counter out. Like, there's still uses for Hachan. It's just that the main priority, I think, for me was just to put him out with Arlong if you don't have anything else to put out. But other than that, there's really not much I can do with this card. Like, it's the same thing with Fish or Tiger. It's just like they're just there because there aren't a lot of great options, which is kind of a shame. And finally, the last card, which is stupidly good, it's Hody Jones. It's a 7 for 8. He has Rush, and on play, rest up to a total of 2 of your opponent's characters or Dawn cards. So you can combine 2 characters, 2 Dawn cards, or 1 character and 1 Dawn card. Then add 1 card from the top of your life cards to your hand. It's a very good fishman. It's a playable fishman. I would put it as some sort of like late game pressure. If your opponent has like like 1 or 0 life and they don't really have much, you just drop him and then attack for 11 and you win. Could also work. But that's pretty much like the deck list. And the way that I would play, well, my boyfriend plays like way better at Nami than I am. That it's really been his deck since the very beginning. But having played Nami's standard deck a few times, like it kind of gave me some insight as to how this deck can be very powerful. Because Nami is in this format has become a hybrid leader. You can either win with the attack, we can win with the standard military attack. You just attack and beat smash face. You just go for it. Or you mill out. You have two ways to win with this deck, which is very unique. Like there's not a I believe right now in this format, this is the only hybrid leader. Unless you were to play Gold Roger at the start of OP09, you start adding them into your red deck as your mercenary. I don't see another win condition. It's really just Nami who has like an alternate win condition in this format at the moment. And it's really nice to see. So the way that you play this deck is you always, like for me at least, is to always go for Nami as your captain. Do not play Arlong as your captain. Like you would want to have some sort of pressure from the get-go, and like there's a psychological factor of losing to mill and you're doing your best to avoid milling out, that you're scaring your opponent into like countering out to make sure you don't mill a lot of cards, and then they forget that they have a bunch of other characters that can just attack you to death. So that's what makes this deck quite special. In terms of, I would say, the use of the Loketown card, I really thought that being able to just play Loketown, activate it, and then refreshing it every single turn was the correct way to do it. But after some testing, I figured that you would want to play this when you're at most 5 cards in your hand. 6 at the limit, but do not play this when you have 7, 8 cards in hand, because the fact that you're refreshing this for 2 Dawn every turn means that you have 2 less Dawn to do other actions in your game, and it's Dawn management for Nami becomes super important, especially when you have those rush cards or those cards that would like you to mill. It becomes really important because like for 2 Dawn, you can just not refresh it, pay 1 more, you play Sanjay's Pilaf, you're drawing 2 anyway. It's the same effect. So technically Loketown is a good card. You just don't have to use it every turn unless you're hard bent on that mill strategy, which is not the most effective. Anyway, I feel like I've said my piece, I think, for what this deck is. I think there will be a deck list in the description, or you can just basically pause and, maybe I'll put a description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this awesome deck tech. I love the pairing and I love the stage. I love the deck as a whole. And it's like before I used to hate Nami, especially like before when I was just playing standard, because like I would lose to it because I didn't know what I was doing. But now I see the value of how powerful this deck is. And if you want to see like a gameplay, you can actually, I did post like my first my first like gameplay video was between Nami, Arlong, and Rebecca Kiros, which is it was a close one. I would admit it was a bit of a close one, and I was scared of like losing, but I was able to get to it in the end. But it goes to show how powerful Nami is, even when you're not milling, because milling is incidental in this deck. Anyway, hope you guys liked the video. You can like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more. And stay frosty, friends.